Convictions and confessions close cases, but they don't always solve mysteries. And so it is with the vicious and senseless murders that Bryan Kohberger admits that he committed in Moscow, Idaho, while never answering the second biggest question of all, which is why? Why did you do it? Why did you pick those four? Why were you so brutal and cruel? Why did you want to kill 4 innocent kids? Legally, motive doesn't matter. So it did not come up in court, and it is nowhere in the documents that Bryan Kohberger signed. Unless, of course, you see those documents through the eyes of a highly trained professional, which my next guest very much is. Bart Baggett is one of the world's leading forensic handwriting experts and has spent some quality time poring over Bryan Kohberger's samples. Bart, it is so good to see you again. It's been forever and a day. I was really looking forward to talking to you about this. I'd love to hear your overall thoughts as you just looked at these signatures for the first time.
Well, Ashley, thanks for having me back on the show. I really thought maybe you're punking me because these signatures are so strange. I thought, is a 4th grader writing this, or is this a drug addict? Like I didn't, and then I started following the story because I'm behind on it, and oh my gosh, this is one of the weirdest signatures I've seen from a convicted killer.
So let's sort of dig in. You know, he's got the signature on the plea agreement and on the confession. Do you, when you do your science, do you look at one particular sample? Do you compare to other samples? Or how do you ply your trade?
Well, I would love to have pages and pages of a diary. That would be the most secure thing. But one of the interesting things is one of these documents in 23, he forgets a lot of his letters. Like he's not even coherent enough to spell his own name. And then the 25 one, he spells his own name. But the most obvious thing is it just looks like a low skill level. And so that's the technical word. If somebody doesn't know how to write English, or they're just learning how to sign their name in 3rd grade, they don't have the skill level. They don't have the neuromuscular repetition like you and I did hours and hours and hours in 3rd or 4th grade. So what I was saying, I wasn't being flippant, like, is this a 4th grader or is this someone with brain damage? And so that was the problem, is it's like, what would cause someone with such a good education to literally have neuromuscular degeneration at 28 years old? It's a perplexing case.
So I was talking with my staff, and some of us are over 50 and some of us are under, 30. And we wondered if it might be a generational thing because, in a lot of schools, cursive went out the window. And so trying to create a signature, if you're not really, if you don't have good cursive muscle memory, might be tricky. Have you seen that in your practice?
I think that's a very fair argument. I have seen people under 30, and I'm like, wait a second, I can't be too judgy, because if they didn't go to a school where they had hours and hours of handwriting, they may have low skill level. So that is true. I don't see how a guy gets a master's degree and PhD school without filling out hours and hours and hours of blue books. We know he's not from a different country. We know he's not just learning English. I think it has something to do with his heroin usage. I did a little research, and there's a lot of evidence that with heroin usage, if that's true, by the way, it does affect decision-making, motor control, fine motor coordination, tremors, and slow movement. That obviously is what we're seeing in the handwriting. So maybe it really is residual brain damage.
And what about, illness? Like, might he be suffering from any kind of illness given what you're seeing on the page?
Yeah, the most accepted forms of illness through handwriting are Parkinson's, dementia, and Alzheimer's. He's way too young to do those unless it's Parkinson's. Parkinson's is similar to what we're seeing here, but I didn't read about that in any of the footage. So no, I think he's not cognitively as sharp as we think he is. I think he's slow. I think he's nervous and anxious and untethered. And I don't think I can answer your first question of why, Ashley, but I don't trust the guy, and I feel like he's not all there.
Well, listen, I never thought this guy was much of a criminologist, I'll tell you that. And I was shocked that he got into a PhD program, because this crime was a disaster from the get-go. I mean, just strategically thinking, he messed up from the moment he left his house and turned his phone off in the middle of the night, and then turned it back on as he was driving back into his home. But let me ask you this. Overall state of mind, I almost felt like I'll call Bart, because Bart's going to tell me that you can see rage and anger and hatred of women and all of this in the signature, because I think you've been able to see that stuff before. Could you spot any of this in the scant samples that we have from Bryan Kohberger?
Yeah, I would love to say that I spotted all that, but in this handwriting, all I have is a very slow person with no clear motivation. I think it's hard to string together thoughts, honestly. I think you're referring to other shows. You've got serial killers. You have all these masterminds of murder that plan ahead. They're articulate. They're precise. They're introverted. No, this guy's none of that. He's not a mastermind. He's kind of I don't use the word, but he's a little slow.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.